Hello and welcome, everyone. Today we're talking about the utility of Ivinex, the long-term and short-term value proposition, and how Ivinex solves problems within an organization. So we're going to move rapidly here. There's a lot to cover, but first off, I want to talk about there's a thought experiment in the business world. And it goes like this. If you put a group of people in the desert with a vehicle that's stuck in the mud, and you take the tires off the vehicle before you put it in the mud, those people, if you have enough people, they will figure out how to get that car out of the mud, right? So just as a general thought experiment, think about that. You're taking the tires off of the car, and then you're asking people to get that car out of the mud. And of course, the heavier the car, the heavier the problem that you're trying to solve, the more people that you need as a utility to solve that problem, because those people are going to make up for the lack of tires. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we're talking through here, because what I want to emphasize is that you can get a car out of the mud. There's a lot of ways to get a car out of the mud. And as we all know, it's easier to get the car out of the mud if the car can drive out of the mud on its own utility, right? So that's where, the terminology sport utility vehicle, it's serving a utility, it comes from. So anyways, keep that in mind, that the bigger the problem, the more people you need to throw at it if you don't have the proper wheels or proper utility for them to use. Because if you technically, you would only need one person to drive the vehicle out of the mud, versus you might need 15 people to drive the vehicle out of the mud otherwise with the wheels off. Anyway, so let's take a look at this. So again, we're gonna take a deep dive today. I'm gonna move as quickly as possible, but this is the short and long-term value proposition. It's basically an evaluation. It's a way for you to evaluate your business to determine whether the Ivinex Agent Desktop is the right fit for you, to understand the relationships with the different employees, with your common employees, your project decision makers, and your financial decision makers. What is everyone's role in the process, and how can everyone be best served as we move forward on this journey? So let's start with a question. The first question I have is, what is the purpose of work? And most often the purpose of work is to solve a problem. And I know that's philosophical, it's very straightforward, but I did want to get to the bare bones of that. The reason why we work, or the reason why we get paid, is because we're solving some kind of a problem. When a solution solves a direct problem, that solution becomes a utility, which is something essential to your goals, right? So a utility, as we all know, a lot of us are familiar with, gas and electrical utilities, water utilities, and you don't realize how crucial they are until they're gone. I actually had my water turned off twice this year, not because of my billing, but because of frozen pipes, or because of other changes to the systems. The entire neighborhood actually had their water off multiple times. But anyways, that when you're missing a utility, when the utility is gone, you notice it, right? When your water heater goes out, now you're taking a cold shower, and some people like cold showers for sure, but for those of us that don't like a cold shower is rather unpleasant. And of course, you can get through your day. You can get through your day without most utilities. Actually, without water, you can't really get through more than seven days, or more than 3 days, depending on your circumstances. But anyway, the point is that you don't recognize that a utility is gone until it stops flowing. If the electricity stops flowing, if the water stops flowing. So that's the mindset that we want to get into. And that's not true of everyone. I mean, project decision makers and financial decision makers, they will understand. They're the types of people that are going to understand the value of utility. So we'll talk about these different types of employees in a second, but first I want to talk about what we're covering today. So we're going to talk about the value proposition as far as your competitors are concerned. So the question here is, what if your competitors are doing something that you're not, and what does that mean as far as the agent desktop and the contact center? And then we're going to say what are the struggles of the call center and back office agents? What problems do they face? And then managers and executives, what problems do they face? So it's very simple. We're talking about solving problems at 3 different levels: competitors, call center, back office agents, managers, and executives. Now, first, let's look at kind of the hierarchical structure of your company. Let's look at the common employees and the characteristics of a common employee. Now, this is not to disparage anyone's role. Everyone's role is important, as you'll see, but it's just different people think differently. Different people look at things differently. So to see the utility of something like our agent desktop, it takes a certain level of training and experience and knowledge. So with common employees, and this is the case for any solution, right? Any new solution. Common employees, about 90% of your employee population, they're going to be flexible and persistent people. That's a great benefit. They recognize utility when the utility is taken away for a period of time. That's true of all of humanity, right? Just as I said, if your water is turned off, you recognize that utility. You're very grateful. You're never more grateful for that utility than when it gets shut off. They're willing to adapt and learn, but only if the solution is a step forward, right? So common employees they're skeptical, right? And so this is when we get into agent adoption. And that's one of the areas that we want to serve. We have to serve all 3 of these roles, right? We have to serve 100% of people if we're providing a utility. So what I wanted to do, again, is not to disparage anyone's role or their position in the company. What I wanted to do is recognize the different levels of value that people provide and how their role really completes the picture. So with the common employees being skeptical, that gives us a great test audience, right? Which is exactly what they are. They're the test audience. They're skeptical about new solutions. They will adapt, but it has to be a step forward, right? So we have our primary objectives. It has to be a step forward for them, period. They won't do it. If it is a step forward, if we try to take it away, they're going to get mad, right? Because now it's become a utility. It's become part of their life. It's made their job easier. So there's 2 ways for you to know basically that you made the right decision. Obviously, agent adoption, which, agent adoption in a lot of times when someone is skeptical, you can't always give them the option to say, no, I don't want to do this. They have to try the system, right? They need to try it for a couple of weeks before they, push back if they have any pushback. And their skepticism is very useful as well, as we'll learn down the road, because when you're implementing a system, you're going to have changes. And this is where the changes come from, right? So someone who's using the interfaces, you've got the visionary role of the project decision maker, and the visionary has a hypothesis or a theory of what the screens need to look like for the employees, for the call center employees, for the back office employees. But you can't be 100% correct in a theory. You're never, ever going to be 100% correct in a theory. That's why we do live testing with the skeptical group. And the skeptical group, these are the ones that actually refine the solution and turn it into the ultimate utility. So these 90%, these common employees are bridging the gap between hypothesis and reality. What's the reality of what we need? So that's common employees are our reality check. Okay. Is it really working? Are they really happy with it? Project decision makers, again, they're roughly 9% of your employees. They're visionary and goal focused. They'll recognize the utility of something if it meets their priorities. They're creative problem solvers who adapt to the organic needs of the business. And they have a clear understanding of the priorities to solve issues. So again, project decision makers, they're priority driven, they're goal oriented, and they're creative. Now, what is the blind spot of a project decision maker? Well, number one, they're human, right? So you can come up with a theory or a hypothesis of how something is going to work, but you're only going to be right. You're only going to be accurate to a certain percentage, as you are, of course, a human being. That's where our reality check comes into play, right? Our common employees are going to test that theory and prove it out. So that's a very important role. So you have a clear understanding of the priorities. So again, the center column is priorities, the left column is reality check. Now we have the financial decision makers, the right column. These are the 1%ers. They're discerning and objective. They're quick to recognize the utility and benefits of something. And I mean, I can show a screen to a financial decision maker, and it takes them, minutes to understand and formulate basically the throughput of what's possible, right? And the outcomes. They're fast to adapt and move forward, but they are conscientious. So again, discerning and objective, but they're fast to adapt and move forward because they know that that's necessary. So the survival of the company relies on the project decision maker and the financial decision maker working in concert. You need the visionary, but you also need the discerning and objective people to make sure that the money is spent appropriately, to make sure the investments are investing in a true utility. Is it a real utility? Does it really solve a problem? Because if I say that I'm providing you water and you get Gatorade, you're going to be very upset. So, and then the last item is the financial decision maker views solving problems as mandatory rather than optional. So the difference between the financial decision maker and the project decision maker is the project decision maker has a little bit of a blind spot because they're focused on priorities. And the issue is when you're focused on the high priority items, obviously it can pull your focus away from areas of utility that you may not recognize because you're so focused. Let's say you have your top 3 things that you want to solve, but because you have to focus so hard on those things in your role, it's difficult to see the usefulness of solving the lower priority items. So that's where the financial decision maker comes in, and they provide that discerning and objective look at things, and they say, is this a utility? Is it solving a problem in theory, or is it solving a problem in reality? And that's what we're going to talk about today, is that Ivinex solves a problem in reality, right? Ivinex is going to solve problems not in theory, but Ivinex has been proven to solve the problems that we're going to talk about today. And that's vital, to everything that we're doing. So basically that's basically setting up the stage. So let's get into the competitors. So what utilities does Ivinex serve, and what are the long-term versus short-term impacts? Now, from this point forward, I'm basically going to go with each line item, and then I'm going to jump to the platform, and I'll show you what's possible. I'll show you what we're talking about, and I'm going to do this very quickly because I don't want this to run too long. So anyways, the premise here for the first item is, what if your competition is solving this problem, but you're not? Or what if another department? So if you're in government or education, or even a nonprofit, the question is, usually you're going to be competing with other departments. So the question is, if other departments within your organization are solving these problems, but you're not, what are the consequences, right? So some of the consequences of not using utility would be your budget is reduced because your labor costs are higher. Your budget is reduced because your outcomes are not as streamlined as you would like them to be. So everything, basically, when it comes to a utility, is going to impact either the budget or the labor, anything that's going to be applied to that, because anything that takes time is going to cost money. And anything that takes time is going to result in labor. So basically you have that triangle, or that triangulation of budget and time and labor. That's really what we're talking about in terms of utility. That is an unescapable triangle of logic, right? So let's talk about the first item here. So if your competition or competing departments, if they streamline their business intelligence using process automation and guided processes, what is the impact of that? So process automation and guided process, that's the utility within Ivinex that we're going to serve. And the outcome is going to be that all crooked roads are now straightened or in the process of getting straight. So what does that mean as a utility? We're basically going to look at process automation. What we're doing is we're taking a process, again, talking about that vehicle with no wheels, and we're going to add wheels to it. And so basically the system, you now have a system that can keep track of your processes, and it can hand off back and forth to your employees. It can execute things on its own. It can do assignments and emails and text messages. So all those tedious tasks the system can do on its own, but it can also assign work to folks. And basically the great thing about this is if you have a complex process that you need to run, then it's going to straighten that out. And I won't get too deep on each one of these. So let's look at our next item, unifying the data into a single source of truth. So a lot of clients are using, 2 or 3 systems for their data, for their agent data. And then their agents are having to look up in those systems all those different pieces of data. So basically what problem does that present? Well, it adds time and labor as part of that triangle, that triangle of utility. So when we're trying to solve that, what we do is basically we can synchronize through the API, we can synchronize the data, and we can bring everything together on a single screen. So for the screen that you're looking at here, maybe this data on the left side is coming from Salesforce, and this data in the center is coming from your proprietary system. And then this data on the right side is coming from SharePoint, from your knowledge base. Obviously, it can all be stored locally. It depends on your needs. But if we're having to synchronize data between multiple systems, and it's not limited to 3, I mean, it could be 5 systems or 8 systems, then what we're doing is as a call comes in, we're loading all the data that the agent needs to see immediately. So the question is, if the agent, what is the benefit of the agent seeing everything all at once versus having to go in and on a treasure hunt for data for 90 seconds or more? Our clients report an average of 1.5 minutes that agents are having to look for data in different systems. And think of that by way of comparison to, as the call comes in, the system recognizes the number and pulls the data from multiple sources on the screen all at once. It's extremely efficient. Okay, now let's look at the third item here. So taking advantage of one-click reporting. So this is going to go back to the KPI dashboards and data hub. So tying together all of your data has some other benefits, which are extremely powerful. And again, if your competition is doing this, if your competition is bringing all their data together into a single screen, they're going to gain efficiencies, they're going to gain insights into their data that you don't have, because they're combining the contact center interactions with the use case data into a single screen. And there's a lot of options here. You can see any data within the system from any interaction can be combined with any use case data. So a use case would be inbound scripted process. It would be, ticketing. This is ticketing that we're looking at here. So this ticketing data combined with the phone call data, the text message data. So all of these interactions are combined with this use case, right? And so now the power of the reporting that I can get is phenomenal, right? And of course, we have Excel type of reports that's really easy to do in the system, and those can be defined as no code, as frictionless. And so we can also do that with these KPI dashboards. So let's get to our results. So interaction use case data are married, therefore complex reports can be shown in a single click. So what's the benefit of that? You can now make decisions. You can make decisions relevant to data, which is probably one of the most useful things that you can do in the business world. So if you don't have visibility on all of that data combined, that's a huge problem as far as your decision making. Future-proofing your solutions. What this comes down to is adaptability. We had mentioned, we talked about the tires, the vehicle being stuck in the mud and the tires. All right, well, let's throw a curveball into that. Let's say that it's snowing, right? If it's snowing, now we don't just need tires, we need probably snow tires. But that's an adaptation, right? Because now the weather has changed seasonally. So the no code adaptability and the process automation, I've already shown you the process automation piece, which you can make changes to. But also on the system admin side, everything is drag and drop. So I'm just going to take a short tour here of the system, of the back end of the system, and show you that you can make changes on the fly. So you can add, this would be the piece that we saw on the left side, and you can see that here if I scroll up. So this interface on the left side, everything is drag and drop. And if I need to add data fields dynamically, I can do that. So adaptability, some good examples of that would be for utility. If you have new compliance items or if you have new data that you need to capture, remember that 1%ers or financial decision makers, they like to capture as much data as possible because they know that data is valuable. And if the data is not valuable today, if it's relevant to the business structure, they're going to find a way to make use of it down the road. So it's good to capture as much data as possible, but then you have things that come up, like maybe there's a medical issue like the pandemic, where you need to change procedures. And so if you're a hospital or a hotel and you want to change your check-in procedures, you can add those data fields to do that. Did you tell, for example, let's add a checkbox, let's add a new field. What do I need? Well, I need a checkbox and I need to be able to say, are you wearing a mask, or are you going to bring a mask when you come in for your appointment? Those types of things, those types of changes, because business is organic. Business is always changing. Life is always changing. And every business is different and every business needs to adapt. So even if you were starting a new leg of the business, you'd be able to create the data set for that. What you're looking at as far as the data set can be created in about 15 minutes. So that's the adaptability and versatility. If your competition has that and you don't, then typically you're going to be waiting for engineers for many, many months to solve those problems for you. Now, assigning work is an issue. So there's a lot of obstacles to assigning work typically. As a visionary, as a leader, you want to be as effective and intelligent as possible. You want to get the right work in the hands of the right person. Certainly, many people are talented at doing it manually. But what if your competitors are doing it through automation and through business intelligence? So that's something that's now off of their plate that is still on your plate. It's something you still have to hassle with. So management having thousands of options to assign work and being able to dynamically change how work is assigned is vital to today's market. And so you can say from a utility standpoint, if we're making work assignments, what does that mean? That would go back to the process automation piece. And so again, not only can this communicate automatically with your customers by sending out text messages and emails, that's kid stuff. That's very basic. This system can also assign work, keep track of SLAs. So it'll say, okay, you're assigned a call, Jenny. Tom, you're assigned an outbound email, and so on and so forth. Or we're assigning a case, right? We're going to automatically assign tickets. based on criteria. And you could say, anything that's escalated, I want Marge to handle. Anything that's a problem that could cost us more than $10,000, I want Tom to handle that, and so on, right? So the automation of work assignments, making sure that work is flowing to the right people, is crucial, especially when you have people going on vacation, getting sick, taking days off. You can't assume that people are always going to be there. So, if your competitor has solved that issue of automating work assignments, then someone getting sick or going on vacation is not going to stop their workflows. It's not going to hurt their customer service. Everything is going to automatically flow over and get reassigned because there's an SLA on it. So if you have an SLA monitor, which we do have in the system, and something is not resolved within 30 minutes, the system knows that it needs to escalate that and find someone, with the bullseye routing, find someone who's going to take care of it. So the top competition or competing departments, they're going to be 25 to 50% better or more efficient than 80% of the market, right? That's just common logic. The market leaders, the top 20% of the market leaders, are 25 to 50% more efficient. Now, the question is, who is striving to be a market leader? Who wants to be part of that top 20%, right? The question is, the cost of the utility. And this relates to all major components within the UUE. And of course, the Toyota way says your business improves dramatically when departments utilize the logical assembly line structure, right? So the question is, the biggest conundrum in business is, hey, how can we make sacrifices today for the benefit of tomorrow? That's one of the biggest struggles that folks have. How can we stop running in the hamster wheel? Because the hamster wheel has to keep going, but how can we slow down that hamster wheel and give us time to actually build out something that's going to make our lives easier, to give us the utility that we want, that we have to have, and to accomplish the goals of the financial decision maker and the project decision maker, right? So that struggle, and a lot of folks are facing it, with today's labor shortages, of is it worth it to slow down and get these processes improved? Well, if you're looking at a 25 to 50% improvement in your overall performance, yes. And if you have something that's dynamic and adaptable, yes, because it is a utility. It is serving a utility. So the question is, do I have a problem to solve? And if I solve that problem, would it be a utility to me to have that problem solved permanently? Because again, you can get the vehicle out of the mud without the tires, but it's nowhere near as powerful or as useful to you. So that's the question. For the financial decision maker, they're going to say, put the tires on it. Just put the tires on. And there's an interesting mindset. Sometimes you have in the engineering sector, you'll have folks who they feel like saving money on the top line is good for the bottom line 100% of the time, but that can't be true, right? Most concepts financially are not true 100% of the time. So the question is, will this small investment, serve a utility that will affect the bottom line in a positive way if we're 25 to 50% more effective as a company? Should we make that move? For the financial decision maker, that's very easy. For the project decision maker, it's a question of priority, right? The project decision maker is a visionary. They need their priorities handled, because the project decision maker gets paid to take care of priorities. They get paid to hard focus on priorities and to be creative, problem solvers. So does this solution allow me to be a creative problem solver? Yes, I can do automation. I have full control over actions that are taken automatically, even based on, if this hits level 50, I can trigger an automated action. I have full control over the screen, how these data fields are laid out, where the data is coming from, how the data is flowing. I have full control over the data architecture and the data hierarchy. So as a project decision maker, does this serve my needs? Does it allow me to attack those priorities? I believe it does. I've seen it in action, and through testimonials from our clients, they've had some of the most productive years ever when they set up this system and they do it right. And part of doing it right is your agents, right? Your agents are your source of truth. Your agents, your employees are the reality check. Obviously, again, you don't want to give your common employees too much of a free, too much free space to deny using the platform. But if they're using the platform and they're giving you feedback, that's extraordinarily valuable. And it's a critical step in making sure that you hit your target. Your employees really help to make about 10 to 20% of the magic happen, because we're making adjustments. We're testing this live. So we're taking the theory, we're putting the theory together, and then we're testing it live. So we're using the scientific process to deliver a utility. And that's exactly the way that you want to do it. We find it to be extremely effective, especially if you're testing with your top performing agents. Your top performing agents are your most discerning group, but they're also your most intelligent, your most aggressive and persistent. So they're going to have a lot of experience. They're going to tell you, it would be useful, step one, if we had this, if I move this over to this side of the screen, that type of feedback, right? So, does this serve all three parties is the major question that you need to ask yourself. And then investing and working smarter and leading the industry. We did talk about that. And initially what we're talking about is performance. I apologize for that. I had an urgent client need. I needed to take that call. Anyways, investing in working smarter and leading the industry. So this is similar to what we just covered, but the question is the investment of it. Just one. My apologies. I had another urgent call, but we should be good now. Everyone is all settled and they're very happy. All right. So investing and working smarter. Again, the conundrum that every decision maker faces is, can I slow down on one track so that I can produce a useful utility on the other track? And the question is, on the investment side, what is that worth? What is it worth to the bottom line when we solve these problems? And that's really what it boils down to. So once we've created this utility, and once we've, we all know that what the green pasture looks like on the other side, or at least we have a vision for the pasture being greener and things being easier and smoother, and everyone has ambitions to make that happen, but only the top 20% of the industry is really making that happen. So the question from a management standpoint, and that's another thing that goes back to the financial decision maker, is can we make sacrifices today so that we can have a better tomorrow, which is the core of economics, right? Let's make some sacrifices in our time. Let's make some investment, and let's have a better tomorrow, to serve our utility needs, to make our agents more effective, so that people are not trying to move that vehicle out of the mud without tires, right? Because you drive it out under your own power, and obviously that's the ideal scenario. That's where everyone, 100% of these people have aspirations to get there, but only about 20% of the top performing companies ever actually get there, for the reasons mentioned. Now, let's talk about the problems faced by agents. So agents, they're human. They have short memories. That's where process automation comes in handy. The long-term process automation. Now that I've shown you a lot of the components, I'm just going to hammer through these rather quickly. But the long-term process automation, I have a use case where someone takes out a piece of equipment and they rent that piece of equipment out for 18 months. And then the problem is, after 18 months, everyone forgets that they leased out that piece of equipment. So there's no procedure in place for people to take action. As a result, they can lose weeks or months of revenue. So that's one kind of extreme example of, having a short memory and not being able to take care of long-term things. So the computer is always going to have a better memory than the agent, which is a great utility. And then the second thing for agents, we talked about having to find data in multiple systems. So again, our clients are reporting about a 1.5 minute reduction in calls when they are when they're going through a system that shows everything on the screen all at once. Just one moment. Sorry about that. The internal team had a few questions for me. All is well. Okay, so they must find data in multiple systems. We talked about that. The agent basically having all the data on their screen. As the interaction comes through, they see the data immediately that's relevant to what they're doing. They're not going on a treasure hunt for data. That's a pretty clear utility and advantage. There are many redundant and repetitive tasks. That's through the process automation. Now, if you have agents that are going out and manually typing up emails, manually typing up text messages, those can be solved with templates and they can be automated in the background. So your agent doesn't have to stop what they're doing and go fulfill those tasks. The system can also assign tickets to agents automatically. That's not something that management has to do. It can also reroute, basically reroute tickets to other folks as well. So it can do assignments, it can do escalations, it can keep track of SLAs. Those are all utility items. They're all well known and documented in business. Agents often need help from colleagues in other departments. Getting everything on the same screen, getting everyone on the same screen in the same system is crucial. And then notifications and work assignments is going to help with that. So basically, when you need help from someone in another department, you can put work into their queue by selecting their name or selecting their group. That's one of the ways to do it. There's a lot of ways to do things in the system, but the utility of being able to make requests to your colleagues or assign work to your colleagues' queues, and then having the long-term effects of that, the system can keep track of a long-term process. So if it needs to go from one department to another, we do have interdepartmental routing for your processes. So if you say something needs to start in onboarding with an onboarding team, and then it needs to go to accounting, and then it needs to go in for some kind of an evaluation, and then it needs to go back to the onboarding team, so on and so forth. We do have that. That's a very clear utility. And again, a well-documented function within business. The unique and new scenarios always come up. We'd mentioned new compliance items, things like COVID that impact the business. There's always going to be something around the corner, some kind of change, once every quarter, once every 6 months, or more frequently. It just depends on how many clients you have. So being able to change things at an individual client level has major advantages. You can change things in the data structure. You can change things in the data hierarchy. Any piece of data can be linked to any other piece of data in the system. So we have a very sticky database architecture, which means that you can basically set up whatever hierarchy you need, and you can adapt to whatever hierarchy you need. So if you said, I need to service clients, and then I need to service contacts underneath those client objects, or I need to service a geographic area, and then I need to service clients, and then I need to service contacts for each client within that geographic area. And whatever you can think of in terms of data hierarchy, the system will be able to adapt. So those new scenarios, whether it's a different data structure, if it's new data that you need to capture, if it's a new automation that you need to do, if it's a new guided process, that is all baked into the pie. And this serves a very powerful utility for being able to dynamically adapt to your business needs as your business grows. So that future-proofs your solution. It gives you a lot of options. And anytime that, there's always that person that comes about and says, hey, we could improve this if we just did that. And wouldn't it be fantastic if you could just do it and surprise them the next day and say, yeah, that's done. You know, hey, it's already up and running. And you have to wait a week before you come back to me with another idea. Anyways, so balancing quality against time per interaction. That again, I mean, that goes back to the whole project, but that goes back to each individual call, right? Time is part of that triangle of utility. And for the agent, you know, if they want to get through all their interactions, that's their number one goal, right? So if the agent is having to get through so many interactions to keep their job, then they're going to sacrifice what? They're going to sacrifice quality, right? So we don't want them having to sacrifice quality to get their job done, which means creating guided processes, the single screen architecture, maybe adding in a little process automation to eliminate redundant, repetitive tasks. So now when they get into the screen, you know, the worst nightmare for an agent, especially a new agent, is they have 50 data fields on the screen relating to a process instead of the process going step by step and saying, here's step one, here are the categories for step one. Here's what we're going to show you based on your selection. Make another selection. Here's step two. Here's what we're going to show you. And so instead of showing you those 50 data fields, maybe we only show you 5 at a time or 10 at a time, but it's a lot simpler. And the agent is only looking at the data that is essential to the situation they're dealing with, right? So we can eliminate, I mean, if they're working on an RMA, a return merchandise request, if they're working on an RMA, they don't necessarily need to see the data for, you know, the billing and so on. So we can keep a really tight control and serve a utility there for the process flow. Training and gaining knowledge to work comfortably takes months. So competency, you know, with employees, competency is always going to take some time. But again, going back to the guided processes and agent screen controls, the fact that you have full control over what's represented on the screen, whether it be the data fields, the positioning of the data fields, what order the data fields appear in, you know, so if I make this selection, maybe I only show 5 data fields. Then I make this selection, maybe I show different data fields once these 2 are selected. There are thousands of possibilities for the way that this step-by-step process can flow. It's all drag and drop. It's all business logic. So if you can do business logic, which is, I want, if it's in this status and that status, if that is true, then I want to show these data fields. That's it. That's all you need to understand. And you can execute these without the help of an engineer. It's simple, it's frictionless, it gets rid of the pain, right? So let's get back, now let's get into the management benefits and the problems that we're trying to solve for management. So managers, they don't have proper access. In a lot of cases, they don't have proper access to do A/B testing for their workflow procedures. So from a standpoint of a visionary, like I said, the visionary has the hypothesis of how to solve the problem, right? But that needs to be tested. It needs to be tested in reality. The best way to test a process is to actually test, here's process A, here's process B, and that's what you can do within the system. So we've made it very easy for you to come in and establish a process and then to establish a secondary copy of that. So if I come into the process automation, I can say, okay, this is my process. Now create a copy of this entire process, and I'm going to make some slight modifications to it. So we make it quick and easy to do. And we have reports where we can show the results of process A versus process B. So you have baked into the cake A/B testing for your workflow processes, right? Now, the no-code adaptability, if we're talking about management being unable to improve data capture with rapid turnaround, what is that problem? What is that common issue? If you want to capture data in most companies, if you want to capture new data, what do you have to do? You have to contact an engineer, you have to get a bid, You have to walk through the details. You have to make sure that they're competent. Then they're going to give you a proposal. You're going to have to approve the proposal. You're going to have to pay them a deposit, and then it's going to take months for them to get the data in place, to test it. They're going to have to test it with you. They're going to have to approve it. It is a very long and cumbersome process. Again, we're trying to move the vehicle out of the mud without the wheels, right? Versus if you want to capture data in our system, if you wanted new data fields, you just wait until everybody is done working for the day. You come in after hours, you add the data fields that you want, you put them in the position you want, and you hit save layout, and you are done. And you just eliminated months and months of headache and expenses. You know, you don't have to pay that engineer. The first question is, what is the engineer going to charge you? How long is it going to take? And then, are they competent enough to get done what you needed to do? Like, what happens if your go-to engineer, what happens if your go-to engineer becomes absent, right? You have to go recruit someone else. And it's another nightmare of what are the possible outcomes with this person? And if this person doesn't deliver, now I start over again, and it's months and months of waiting. So you can eliminate that nightmare. You can have a reliable system that you can change fluidly. Now, the same situation rings true for the data structure. Lack of full control over the data hierarchy. Now, this is something new that a lot of managers need this, and executives want this, but they don't have access to it. So you don't know what you need until you don't know what you don't have, right? And in other words, if you've only ever seen a Volkswagen and you see a Lamborghini, you say, wow, I want that Lamborghini. Now that I've seen the Lamborghini, the Volkswagen is not my favorite car anymore. So the fluid data hierarchy allows you to organize your business units as you see fit. You can link any data to any other piece of data. It's that simple. It's sticky. And the relationship is bidirectional. So if I say, I just spoke to a customer the other day, and they wanted, by default, we link all interactions to a customer record, right? But they said, can you also link any interactions that we have during the call or notes, link those to the call record as well, so that my quality control people, can see those interactions. And when my quality control people are going through the calls, they have access to everything that they need. They have the call recordings, they have the notes, they have the emails, anything that took place during that call, even if it was data entry, the quality control person will be able to access. So again, that's getting back to that single screen architecture, and you can create multiple data hierarchies. That is the same nightmare scenario. If you don't have a system like this, that's the same nightmare scenario that you're facing with the engineer, with the quotes, making sure the engineer is competent, making sure they understand what you want. Whereas us training someone on your staff that you're already paying can take care of this for you. Now, the difference between these two, changing your data hierarchy in a system that is not designed to do that is extremely expensive. It is not only is it expensive, most of the time your engineer is going to propose reprogramming the entire system, even though they technically could do what you want, most likely. It takes a lot of mental gymnastics to change a database architecture. Once the database is defined, engineers are scared of trying to remap a database because, number one, they don't understand your data as well as you do by a long shot. Even though they're engineers, they're smart people, but they're smart in the way that, a blowtorch is hot, right? They don't have the business intelligence that you have with your data, and they never will. So there's fear, right? There's fear of the unknown. So the likelihood that an engineer is going to be able to change your data structure, your data hierarchy, just coding it and just changing the code and the way that the database is mapped out is going to be very rare. Probably only 10% of engineers will be capable of doing that. And I would say even less, maybe 5% of engineers will be willing to give you a quote to do it, because it is a very scary liability to change a data structure. So I don't want to hammer this too hard, but this is very unique in that you can say, hey, I want to attach these objects to these objects now, and Ivinex has the capability to do it. Now, the process might be somewhat complex. We might need to do professional services to do that data mapping for you, but we already have the architecture in place with the stickiness of the data to be able to map it. So as long as there's a way for one piece of data to refer to another piece of data, that's all we need, and there's ways to do that with mass update. There's ways to do that with filtering. So we have some of the most powerful tools in the industry when it comes to changing your data hierarchy to suit different business purposes. And again, it might be a professional services project that maybe is 20 hours or 50 hours, but that will pale in comparison drastically from 150 hour or a 700-hour project. It really depends on how deep your data is, or a complete rebuild of your entire system. So if you want to change your data hierarchy, most businesses end up having to make some sort of changes to their data hierarchy at some point in their life cycle. This is the utility for you. Management spends too much time digging out reports. So OneClick Reports are going to serve a very powerful utility. If your managers are not managing, then you're not serving their best interest. You're not serving your best interest. In order for them to be effective, they need to be managing. So if they're in the trenches digging out data and running logical structures, you're losing. You're going to be losing. Your employees are losing management exposure, and managers are losing employee time. And they're going to end up sacrificing their personal time to bridge the gaps, or they're going to end up leaving if they're having to process too much data. So there's just too much risk in not giving management one-click reports, not giving them. There's a lot of reporting that gives managers powerful views into the architecture. So you have within the system, you're going to have these Kanbans, which will show you step by step, are we dropping the ball? What status is everything in? Can I click on it, quickly view it? You have unlimited Kanbans in the system to track a process from left to right and see where things are getting hung up in the process. So there's a very powerful utility there. And then this view is more of, are we getting to our clients fast enough? Are we taking care of things fast enough? And so you want to see the best of both worlds with that and say, are we dropping the ball, and are we getting to our clients fast enough? And this is also going to measure big red flags. Anything that you want to flag as, hey, we should only have 2 of these. Why do we have 6? And then you can drill down into the data very quickly. So you can build unlimited dashboards with the system. You can build unlimited Kanbans with the system, depending on your use cases. And it's very quick. The newest release of this is extremely quick to create a view like this. All right, so let's see, cannot in many cases see what is happening with the data interactions. Yeah, this is important. The customer journey, it's terminology in the industry. It's well documented that the KPI dashboards, the customer journey, all that's going to help if you're being able to see data and interactions combined. So let's look at two examples of that. First would be this. You have your interaction data. So there's my phone calls, but that could also be phone calls, texts, emails, whatever. What's the end result of these interactions? So these are the appointments set for these phone calls, right? But here's another view of that data. If I want to see interactions and data combined, the utility of that is here's the customer data record, and then here's all the interactions that go along with that customer data record, right? So I have all of that at my disposal, at my fingertips, whether I'm looking at a report and I want to pop it up by double clicking on it, or whether I have it right here in my standard data view. I can filter by it, and I can do the same thing on the other side. So you have, again, it's all about control and utility. So if you're expending a great amount of time on work assignments, meaning that management is having to assign work to employees. Again, we went over the use case of if managers are not managing, then you're not getting the most out of them, or they're not serving the role that you put them in for. So managers at their best, they're going to be able to train and educate employees. The more educated your employees are, the more effective they are. But if your managers are spending time making work assignments, you're not going to be in that top 20% of companies that are achieving their best efficiency, that are, basically living their best life, so to speak, because they have everything tied together with process automation. Managers, obviously, they're going to take some time to adjust the process automation, but that's going to be a lot easier than them having to manually assign out the work. So again, this actually is the process automation that my team is using. If I want to come in here, they're calling outbound to companies with a script. You might have gotten a call from them, and we're just reaching out in a pleasant way and saying, hey, sometimes we call you, sometimes you call us. Would you like to talk about your needs? I have that script in here. Now, if I want to change that script, I just come in here and I would click on one of these nodes, and I would click on the actions, and I would just paste the script in there and hit save. And then that automatically is going to update from my team. So I can go in. I mean, typically you want to do it after work hours, but candidly, I've done it in live production with a team of 20 people, where I go in and just paste the script into each one of these nodes. And because I do, often have evolutions in my scripts and procedures. So it's nice, from a management standpoint, to be able to say, I don't have to contact an engineer to change my script. I don't have to contact IT. I simply come in and I set the rules and the parameters that I want, and then I go about my business. Obviously I check with my team. I'll reach out to them and say, hey, are you seeing the new script? Have a few people confirm it, and then boom, I just go back about my day. So I know for a fact from personal experience, this serves a very powerful utility for me, because my team's making 30,000 calls a month. There's a certain number of appointments that we have to get, and we are getting those appointments. So the outbound use case is extraordinarily powerful in this. I won't get into the weeds on it, but Ivinex is one of the most powerful outbound tools, because we can use thousands of different metrics to assign outbound calls or outbound interactions. So I can't really think of a platform that rivals us in terms of the outbound processes, to be honest. And that's been commentary from some of our partners. I won't name them, but they're very fond of our outbound process, and our contact center integrations allow our partners to take advantage of that powerful outbound process. So let's see where we're at. We've got two more items here. You're anxious about whether customer needs are being met and if they're being met on time. So we talked about that, the Kanban dashboards, the KPIs. Customer success and happiness is contingent upon your ability to see the data as needed. We all know that bottlenecks happen. We all know that things get overlooked, and that management needs visibility on that. So again, going after those items that should not be happening, where you say, hey, we should not have 10 of these incidents, or we should not have 5 emails that haven't been responded to in over a day, those types of things. So measuring the time against your responsiveness is one of the things the system can do from an SLA standpoint, but showing you that there's a problem, obviously, very easily on the dashboard. And then lastly, not only showing you that there's a problem, but notifying you of a problem. So you could say that these are actionable KPIs. There's automation that you can apply to these. So you can say, if this speedometer hits 15, I want you to automatically send me an email and a text message, right? Or maybe you want to add a process automation to take care of the problem, to start taking care of the problem. So that's an even better way to address it. So you could say, if it hits 15, then I want you to start assigning these to another department. So I'm going to build, again, a process automation, and I'm going to say, okay, let's assign it to the department with this node. When it hits 15, we just start assigning those out round robin to that group. And then the group, when the system starts assigning to them, they'll come into their queue, and this is likely what they're going to see. They're going to see new. You see this column for new? They're going to see all those cases flow into their queue in real time. And you could also have the system send a text message to your manager and say, we've hit the threshold of 15 cases that have fallen out of our SLA. I've just assigned 15 cases to your team. Please acknowledge. As a matter of fact, you could have that as well in the dialogue. So it would say, please acknowledge yes or no that you're aware. So the manager actually acknowledges with a yes, and then we can reflect that in the data, right? Once the manager acknowledges, yes, I'm aware of those 15 records. Yes, I can see those 15 records. We could actually remove those flags for that day. We could remove those flags from your dashboard. So you just come into your dashboard. Okay, clearly my manager saw it. They responded to the system with a text message, and the system has cleared out that queue, and I don't have to worry about it, right? It's a great way. If you're an executive who goes on vacation, but you still check your dashboards, it's a great way to, be able to look at something. You look at the dashboard on vacation, but you know that the system is going to automatically assign those once it hits 15. It's automatically going to ask your manager if they've acknowledged them. They're going to have to text back, yes, I have. And so if you see that 15 go to 0 in a reasonable amount of time, then you know for a fact that that's been resolved. And then you can just enjoy your vacation. So you check the dashboard, it goes to 15. You check the dashboard 30 minutes later, it goes to 0. And you smile and you say, yep, my manager's on top of it and I can enjoy myself. So that's just one example of properly using process automation, to allow yourself to have a better vacation. You still have visibility of what's happening, but you can enjoy your vacation more. And then managers have a difficult time with quality control processes and agent evaluations. So again, this goes back to time, the constraints of time versus productivity, and being able to prepare. We'd all love to test our employees, to do training. There's many things that we'd like to do if we had the time, right? There's probably 100 things that most of us in management would like to do if we had the time. And I know certainly that's true for me. So what if we were able to create process automation and we were able to assign test cases to our employees? So during implementation, as you're going through your prototyping process, you can say, I want to create some test cases for my employees that are difficult. So what's a difficult scenario? We're going to send them a fake email, from a Gmail address. We're going to pretend that it's a real customer. The customer is going to be upset. So what you would do is you go out, you create, 5 Gmail addresses, and then we create some email templates for angry customers, different psychological profiles, and say, okay, from this person, here's kind of the resolution that we would expect from the agent in this email, right? And we're going to present a very difficult use case. The system will automatically send the email from that Gmail account to your agent, and then your agent will respond, and then your managers will get to see the response. But the great thing is it would go into a quality control category. So again, that's the beauty of the system, is we have a sticky database and we can create whatever hierarchies we need. So we say, if this is part of the quality control group, then it's going to populate in a queue. They're going to see a new quality control item come in. They'll be able to evaluate that, and they'll be able to enter in whatever evaluation criteria they want. So they'll see the email that went out through automation. They'll see the agent's response. And then you could have another tab here on this record. You could create another tab that the agent can't see. Only the manager can see it, or only the quality control person can see it. And then they enter in the evaluation of that agent's performance. How well did they respond to that email? What recommendations do I have? And then so the quality control person can evaluate it, can give their recommendations. And then the manager would get an alert, and then they would be able to see the feedback from the quality control person. And the manager would be able to meet with the agent and go over that. So not only is this a utility for improving your processes and taking care of your clients and managing and monitoring everything, getting all the data together into a single screen, getting all of your reports and your interactions together, giving you full control at the data level, at the database level, as far as the data hierarchy goes, giving you full control of your process automation, giving you full control over agent work assignments. It's all about control, and it's all about management, being able to effectively make changes without having to contract engineers to build things and to have to wait and wait and wait for things to happen. So, but getting back to this use case of saying, hey, let's build a quality control structure. It's a controlled and measured scientific process, and that's what we're all about in this company. Everything is based on the scientific process. So when we're implementing your system, when we're building it, that's the scientific process. We take your theory and your philosophy, and we put a screen together, right? Then we test that theory. We test it live with your best agents, and we have them say, as they're testing it, you know what, it would be really helpful if, this knowledge base wasn't the first tab up here. Maybe I want my calendar. It's going to be a lot more helpful to have my calendar as the first tab. And then instead of having this data over here, maybe I want this data over here, and I want to switch these back and forth. So this is a view-based architecture. You have full control over the data fields, how the data fields behave, how the data is laid out on the screen, how the tabs are laid out on the screen, how the process automation works, how the database hierarchy works, and on and on and on. So you can see a lot of power and utility here. And we cross many, many different business use cases, and we have a lot of implementations in different industries. So the great thing about the system is it's so fluid that it adapts to thousands of business models. And candidly, that's really what you need, is a system that is capable of adapting to your organic business needs as those needs change, where you're not waiting for months and months. You're not spending extra thousands of dollars on an unproven person or an unproven group. You never know how good a contractor is going to be. You never know if they're going to deliver on time, and so on. I mean, it can be a real nightmare. So let's get rid of the pain. Let's make the investment. Let's slow down the wheel. I know that's one of the most difficult things for everyone. Whether you're a financial decision maker, you're a 1%er, it's usually the 1%ers that are going to say, let's slow down and do this. Let's slow down and make this happen because it's worth it. Let's not kick the can down the road anymore. So that's the real benefit of the financial decision maker, is that they're extremely discerning and objective, and they're willing to do the things that are painful. And so are the project decision makers. It's harder, from an emotional standpoint, it's harder for a project decision maker to slow down because their work is driven on priority, right? If priorities are being neglected, their score begins to go down, their status begins to go down. So they always have to feel like they've got a strong pulse on those priorities. So, backing off on those priorities, maybe 20%, so that you can build something long-term. That's something that the financial decision maker needs to help with, to say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. project decision maker, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to build this system out. Let's make some sacrifices today so that we can have a better system tomorrow. And you really need that. from that financial decision maker, because everyone is looking for guidance from those discerning and objective leaders. Nobody wants to upset the financial decision makers because, that's where everyone's paycheck comes from. So the permission to slow down and to build it needs to come from the top. The initiative needs to be driven from the top. Certainly, you're not going to look at this and say, hey, let's put all of our business needs aside. Let's put all of our business needs on the back burner. That absolutely is not necessary. We can implement this system. It's a full concierge process. It's a full white glove process. We only need, maybe, 2 or 3 calls a week when we're actually going through an implementation. And when we're planning it out, we probably only need 2 or 3 calls in the beginning to talk to your people, to go over what their vision is. We need to understand the vision and the priorities, and then we can build it. So it's not a lot of sacrifice in terms of getting it done, because we're doing most of the heavy lifting. If you want us to, we can certainly do a collaboration if you have the resources. But in terms of sacrifice to get something built, you do have to slow down and allocate your time to it, to make anything, right? Anything that's worthwhile in this world. Raising your children, you have to allocate some time to it. Your relationships, your marriage, you have to allocate some time to it. So these long-term investments in your efficiency, these long-term investments in your utility, it's all well documented and it's worthwhile. And again, you're probably, after going through this, if you've hung on this long, I appreciate it, because this is not the most entertaining lecture, but if you've hung on this long, you're probably asking yourself, why do only 20% of companies get here? And it's because people are busy, and it's easy to get caught up in your priorities and to not be able to scale back enough to make something like this happen. But candidly, you need a team that's going to do the concierge process. You need a team that's going to handle most of it for you. And that's the other reason why, 80% of businesses don't get here, is because perhaps they don't get exposure to the type of organization that would be able to deliver the solution that way. Perhaps they're getting bids from developers that want to build something from scratch. I mean, the system I've been showing you today has millions and millions of dollars of development. The functionality is 100 miles deep before we even get started. And we're always building new functionality. So we have our latest release coming out here at the end of May, and it's phenomenal. It's going to be a lot more modern in terms of the layouts and some of the icons and things like that. So it's going to be a constantly evolving platform, and that's what you want in a utility, is something that's always adapting to the market, because there's always going to be new technologies, new integrations, and that's the whole point behind this. So anyways, thanks for your audience today on this. Hopefully you can see a lot of the value in the short term and the long term. I know I didn't make a lot of distinction, but I will tell you this on the short term. We're preparing this platform to be able to launch in a lot of cases, in probably 80% of the cases, maybe in about 2 weeks. Now, for the more complex projects, it can be 4 to 6 weeks, or it could be a couple of months. It really depends on the level of customization that you're looking for with us. But the great thing is that we have the API hub, and we can plug into other systems. So, if we're plugging into a system that's already, putting the data through the washing machine, as they say, that we need, that's very simple, and that doesn't take very long, for us to execute. So if everything that we're doing involves us just connecting to another system to make use of their functionality, if it's specialized, for instance, some example of specialized systems would be accounting systems, that we can actually process payments in the system, but we're not a certified accounting platform. We would need to plug into a certified accounting platform. However, we can quickly plug into a certified accounting platform and make use of its data. And then secondly, like a warehouse barcoding solution. We're not a warehouse barcoding solution, but we can plug into one through an API, and we can make use of all that data that's being captured by the warehouse barcoding solution. So anything that's specialized is not something that we're going to typically build. We're just going to plug into it. That's the best model for you. That's the best model for us. But in terms of what we do for the agent desktop, what we do for the CRM data, for the agent interaction data, that is extremely powerful, and we are among the market leaders on that. So anyways, hopefully you've enjoyed this presentation. Hopefully it's been informative, and then reach out to sales@ivinex.com. If you have any questions, you also can visit our website, ivinex.com. That's IVINEX.com. And once again, thank you for your time today. I apologize for the disruptions. They were unavoidable. But again, reach out if you have any questions. Take care. Bye.